It's not that the world is too complex for us to understand, but that we stubbornly insist on comprehending it with keys long since rusted. Have you ever pondered why the longer one lives, the more ignorant one seems to become? It's not because they know less, but because they accumulate so many definitions, beliefs, and experiences that they can no longer see things as they truly are. This seems paradoxical. Shouldn't knowledge liberate us? Why does it lead us astray? The Essence of Buddhist Philosophy by Nguyen Duy Can doesn't offer a belief system to replace what you already have. On the contrary, it is a meticulous, patient, and fully awakened process of filtration, peeling away layer after layer of the assumed concepts we unconsciously plant onto our lives. In an era where everyone rushes to find quick solutions, methods, or instant spiritual awakenings, this work doesn't give you an escape. It simply hands you a mirror and a question. Do you dare to look? And to seek the answer to this, let us together summarize and explore this book. When a child was born amidst the praising sounds of heaven and earth, in a wondrous garden of fragrant blossoms, where even the palace guards suddenly forgot their duties, kneeling in awe to gaze upon him, people called it an auspicious sign. But the wonder was not in the flowers, the fragrance, or the radiant aura. The wonder lay in the child's very eyes that knew no fear. He did not cry like other infants, but silently opened them wide to behold the world, as if he had already journeyed through everything. The child was named Siddhartha. His father was King Suddhodana, and his mother was Queen Maya from the kingdom of Kapilavastu. The queen was a symbol of virtue and compassion, but the child was unlike anyone in the royal court. Perhaps because immediately after birth, Siddhartha took 7 steps, a lotus blooming with each footfall. And his first gesture was not a cry for attention or a struggle, but raising one hand to the sky and pointing the other to the earth, declaring, "Above and below, only I am the most honored one." Such an act, if performed by anyone else, would be deemed madness. But with Siddhartha, it was simply a recollection, as if he wasn't newly born but merely returned. Siddhartha's childhood was a series of days enveloped in the excessive protection of his royal father. King Suddhodana believed the prophecies of the seers. If the prince were to witness the suffering of the world, he would abandon his throne to seek the path to liberation. And that was something the king never wanted to happen. He built 3 magnificent palaces for his son, one for summer, one for winter, and one for the rainy season. The roads were cleared before each of the prince's outings. No trace of illness, old age, or death was allowed to enter his sight. But truth always finds a way to permeate the most unexpected places. And on a fateful day, as the chariot carried the prince for an outing outside the city, 4 sights pierced his heart like spears through velvet. A trembling old man with a stooped back, a sick person lying gasping for breath, a corpse covered with a white shroud, and finally, an ascetic with serene eyes walking through the world. Each sight was a direct blow to his youthful beliefs, shattering the illusionary wall the palace had erected for so many years. That night, Siddhartha lay awake. Beside him, his wife, Princess Yashodhara, slept peacefully with a gentle smile. Next to her was their newborn son, Rahula. It was all like a beautiful poem about the world, but Siddhartha saw in it a reminder of suffering. Beauty would fade, youth would age, love would be severed. In that profound silence, he understood that to truly love this world, he must understand what it is. And he left without a word of farewell, leaving behind only his sword, his royal robes, and the past of a prince. Siddhartha entered the forest like a pilgrim searching for something unnamed. The next 6 years were a series of physical and spiritual trials. He studied meditation with ascetic sages, fasting until his skin clung to his bones, his breath as faint as embers. He believed that only by conquering the body could the soul be freed. But the pain only clouded his mind, it did not open the path. On a gloomy afternoon, Siddhartha collapsed by the Nirvana river, his body utterly exhausted. He was almost dead, and in that moment between life and death, something happened. A young woman named Sujata brought him a bowl of milk rice porridge. It was not merely a meal, it was salvation. Siddhartha understood that the path to truth does not lie in extremes, neither in indulgence nor in self-mortification. Truth is the middle way, where nothing is forced, nothing is denied. That evening, Siddhartha sat beneath the Bodhi tree and vowed, "I will not rise until I have found the truth." 7 days, then 14, then 21. On the 49th night, as he delved deeply into the essence of being, Siddhartha clearly saw that all cycles of birth and death are the operation of dependent origination, that no separate self exists. All suffering arises from ignorance, from failing to comprehend the true nature of things. He saw that birth, aging, sickness, and death are not enemies but manifestations of unceasing movement, and he awakened as the sun rose. He was no longer Siddhartha, he was the Buddha, the awakened one. But what always inspires me is not just that awakening, but that after attaining that supreme state, the Buddha chose not to retreat into silence, not to hide in endless meditation. He rose. He returned to the world, to the suffering people he had first encountered on his journey at the deer park. The Buddha delivered his first sermon to the 5 ascetics, including Kaundinya. That teaching, the 4 Noble Truths, was simple yet profound as a panoramic canvas of life. There is suffering, there is the origin of suffering, there is the cessation of suffering, and there is the path to the cessation of suffering. He did not teach dogma, he pointed out the truth. What followed was not a period of glorious miracles, but 35 years of tireless walking and teaching the Dharma. Each day upon waking, the Buddha would arrange his robes, take up his begging bowl, and then sit down to speak with the poor, the rich, kings, butchers, children. Anyone could listen to the Dharma, anyone could practice. In his eyes, no one was higher than another. The Buddha faced opposition, false accusations, and stoning. Even his cousin Devadatta sought to kill him. Yet the Buddha merely regarded him with compassion. In his view, every adversity was an opportunity for practice and learning. Every betrayal was a lesson in impermanence and compassion. At the age of 80, his body worn out, the Buddha lay down between 2 sala trees, blooming out of season. He turned to Ananda, his loyal attendant, and said, "Ananda, light your own lamp and go forth." It was not a farewell, it was a commencement. The death of a person like the Buddha is not an end, it is an invitation. The body lying there was merely a robe worn long enough. His vision remained in the eyes of hundreds of disciples kneeling around him. There was no lamentation, no grand ceremonies, only a strange silence as if all creation held its breath, witnessing something beyond the limits of words. Ananda, his closest attendant, wept then, but the Buddha had once said, "Ananda, whatever is born must perish, nothing is permanent, strive diligently." For the Buddha, death was not an enemy, it was the ultimate teacher. In all his teachings, he always spoke of impermanence, and his own death was a powerful testament to it. No one, not even an awakened being, can escape natural law. But overcoming death is not by living forever, but by no longer fearing it. There's something very few people notice throughout his Dharma teaching life. The Buddha never asserted any doctrine as absolute truth. He did not create a religion. He merely recounted the truth he saw. He said, "Do not believe anything simply because it is found in scriptures. Do not believe anything simply because a famous teacher tells you. Believe when you yourself experience it and find it to be true to your genuine heart." It is this very attitude that imbues the Buddha's teachings with a scientific spirit. Always open, always questioning, always self-verifying. The Buddha did not demand blind faith. He invited awakened faith. If it is faith at all, it is faith in one's own capacity for self-illumination. That is why, more than 2,000 years later, his teachings still profoundly move not only in temples, but also in laboratories, in philosophical texts, and in the hearts of those seeking a way out amidst this noisy world. Looking back at Siddhartha's life journey, from a prince surrounded by luxury to a skeletal ascetic by the river, then becoming the awakened one under the Bodhi tree, we realize this is not just the story of one person. It is an allegory for the journey of anyone moving from ignorance to awakening. Each of us has our own palace where we live safely, but blindly. Each of us has a night of departure, a moment when we can no longer bear the illusion we are living. And each of us, if persistent enough, will have a Bodhi tree where we first see the truth, unclouded by the lens of ambition. But it's not easy. The Buddha spent 30 years to attain enlightenment and a lifetime to live fully with what he saw. No magic shortcut can shorten that path. There is no formula, no secret to success, only sincerity and patience. People often venerate the Buddha as a divine being, but if we do so, we inadvertently push him away. Siddhartha never claimed to be a god. He was merely a human being like you, like me, but one who dared to go to the very root of the question, why do we suffer? and he did not stop until he found the answer. What made the Buddha great was not that he had no faults, but that he never retreated from the truth. Once, he was verbally abused by someone in the marketplace. The Buddha remained silent. When the person tired, he asked, "If someone brings you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does that gift belong?" The person was confused. The Buddha smiled, "You have just offered me harsh words, but I do not accept them. They remain yours." That equanimity did not come from reason. It came from a profound understanding that the ego we protect is not real. Someone insults us, but what are we? That self is not fixed. This body is born and dies. One thought replaces another. Only still observation is real. And in that observation, anger falls away like withered leaves in early winter. Looking back at the legacy the Buddha left behind, we see not temples, not golden statues, not powerful monastic orders, but a simple, quiet, unadorned path. That path can begin anywhere. From sadness, from failure, from existential crisis, from a sleepless night, from a death in the family. And if we are brave enough to take it one step at a time, seeking no immediate results, hoping for no miracles, then that path is the Dharma itself. Perhaps that is what still moves me every time I recount Siddhartha's life. Because somewhere in his journey, I recognize myself, and I believe if you truly listen, you too will find yourself amidst those steps walking through suffering, amidst a dark night of doubt, and perhaps under some tree, the light of understanding will flicker, if only once, but enough to change us forever. There's a paradox that always troubles me. Why do some people chant sutras daily, prostrate to the Buddha through all 4 seasons, yet their minds remain full of turmoil? While others never step into a temple, but live with profound compassion and humility. Could it be that learning the Dharma isn't about the quantity of scriptures read, but about the very substance of the mind? And if so, what qualities does a true student of the Dharma need? I used to think the answer was simple. Just faith, a little diligence, and reverence for the Buddha would suffice. But no, the deeper I delved into this path, the more I understood that learning the Dharma is not for the faint-hearted. It demands a spiritual metamorphosis, not merely a change in behavior, but the self-creation of a new spiritual structure within oneself. First, one must be a person of strong and independent will. A student of the Dharma cannot be easily swept away by the crowd, nor can they merely seek refuge in external forces to escape inner anxiety. The Buddha never promised to save anyone. He only showed the way. Whether to walk it is up to us. A seeker of the Dharma must possess enough inner strength to stand firm amidst adversity without collapsing. One must have the courage to look at the truth, even when that truth is harsh. For learning the Dharma is learning the truth, and the truth is never as sweet as we desire. The second condition, seemingly easy but difficult, is to possess a spirit of doubt. Does that sound strange? A true student of the Dharma is not someone who blindly believes in scriptures. On the contrary, one must know how to doubt, how to question. Not to doubt in opposition, but to doubt in order to verify for oneself. The Buddha clearly stated, "Do not believe anything because it is handed down from generation to generation. Observe for yourself and see if it is true to the truth." This doubt is the fire that keeps the spiritual aspiration alive. It prevents us from falling into the trap of complacency, of preconceived beliefs. It helps us avoid boxing the Buddha into an inviolable idol and instead always see him as a teacher, always inviting us to go further, deeper into our own true nature. The third condition is a sincere heart and a longing for liberation. Not liberation as a vague ideal, but a genuine yearning, like a person drowning yearns for air. The Dharma is not for the idly curious, nor is it an intellectual pastime. It is the path for those who truly suffer and wish to go to the very root of suffering. I once met a man who lived a life of wealth and fame, but in his twilight years, he turned to scriptures as one searches for breath. He told me, "I have everything, but not a single moment of peace. Now I don't want to be rich anymore. I just want to understand why I am anxious." And it was that yearning, not just empty words, that led him to embark on the path of Dharma study with sincerity and humility. For only when we truly hurt do we understand the value of medicine, and only when we truly realize we are lost do we listen to guidance with respect. Learning the Dharma doesn't require much theory. What's needed is an open mind and a heart humble enough to learn from the beginning. A student of the Dharma is like a mountain climber. The higher one climbs, the smaller one feels. Beginners often think they understand. Those who have walked the path for a long time realize they understand nothing at all. And it is this very understanding of understanding nothing at all that is the door to true wisdom. Because learning the Dharma is not about knowing more, but about letting go. Letting go of what? First and foremost, the illusory self, the self that thinks it already knows, that it understands the Dharma, that it is on the path to enlightenment. The Buddha never accepted anyone as a disciple simply because they were intelligent, remembered many sutras, or had a pious appearance. He only walked with those who knew how to live authentically, and living authentically means daring to acknowledge one's own limitations, insignificance, and awkwardness. Living authentically means not pretending to be happy when the heart is full of suffering, not preaching Dharma when one has not yet lived by it oneself. The fourth condition for a student of the Dharma is a mind unattached to fame, status, or disputes over right and wrong. This may seem obvious, but upon entering a spiritual community, you will find that students of the Dharma can also fall into the trap of who is right, who is wrong, who has studied more, who is a master, who is a long-time lay practitioner. And it is this competitive mind that builds a wall, preventing the Dharma from reaching the heart. Once a person asked the Buddha, "Sir, are you God?" "No." "Then are you a divine being?" "No." "Are you an immortal?" "No." "Then who are you?" "I am one who has awakened, that is all." No title, no designation, no label. Awakening is the most beautiful title a Buddhist practitioner can achieve. No need for external recognition, only the self needs to know. And to attain that awakening, a student of the Dharma needs one more essential condition: the ability to continuously and impartially observe one's own mind. This is a profound difference between learning the Dharma and learning conventional theories. In the world of knowledge, you learn to understand. But in the world of Dharma, you learn to see. And that seeing is not on paper. It is in every breath, every thought, every reaction of oneself. Learning the Dharma is seeing anger as it arises, not pushing it away, not clinging to it, but simply observing. Learning the Dharma is seeing envy arise when a friend succeeds, not blaming oneself, not rationalizing, but simply observing. Learning the Dharma is clearly knowing when your mind wants to hide something, wants to show off something, wants to deny something. And it is this non-judgmental observation that will gradually become the light shining upon ignorance. Students of the Dharma do not rush to change themselves, they only train their ability to observe themselves. Like an old artist sitting before an unfinished sculpture, he does not smash it, he only carves and refines it bit by bit with infinite patience. That is why a student of the Dharma also needs one more quality: patience, perseverance, unswayed by external results or progress. In a world driven by speed and achievement, learning the Dharma is a journey upstream, with no clear destination, no medals awarded, no glorious moments to show off, only a quiet growth within, only the gentleness of a soul gradually becoming clearer, even if no one sees it. How long do I study the Dharma until I awaken? That question itself is proof that the person has not truly begun, because awakening is not a reward. It is the natural consequence of an honest life, continuously returning to oneself. Just as a tree grows not by stretching its trunk, but by deepening its roots. A sense of humor and the ability to let go lightly. For without humor, we easily turn the Dharma into a spiritual prison. We might think that learning the Dharma means being serious, sad, austere. No, the Dharma is not in frowning. The Dharma is in the gentle smile when you realize that everything, after all, is just a confluence of conditions. The Dharma is in the ability to laugh at yourself, realizing how foolish you once were, how overly serious you once made life. The Buddha never told us to live in sorrow. He begged for food, taught the Dharma, and sometimes even joked with the bhikkhus. In that humor, there was wisdom. In that wisdom, there was compassion. And in that compassion, there was a whole sky of freedom. If there is one thing that causes new students of the Dharma to easily get lost, it is the scriptures. Not because the scriptures are wrong, but because they are so many, so vast, so easy to overwhelm people. Some read a few sutras and think they have understood the truth. Others get lost in a forest of words, no longer knowing what is primary, what is secondary, what is a means, and what is the essence. I was once like that until I understood that scriptures are not the truth. They are merely a finger pointing at the moon. Buddhist scriptures, if we speak of quantity, are no less numerous than any philosophical system in the world. Thousands of discourses recorded in various ancient languages: Pali, Sanskrit, Chinese, then translated into countless modern languages. Each school also has additional commentaries, interpretations, and dialogues. And amidst this sea of words, there are two great ships that carry practitioners out to sea: the Southern School, Theravada, and the Northern School, Mahayana. The Southern School, also known as Theravada, means the doctrine of the elders. This lineage is considered the closest to the original teachings of the Buddha. The Theravada scriptures are written in Pali and are largely based on the Buddha's direct discourses during his 45 years of teaching. This canon is divided into three large sections called the Tripitaka: the Sutta Pitaka, Discourse Basket, the Vinaya Pitaka, Discipline Basket, and the Abhidharma Pitaka, Special Doctrine Basket. The Sutta Pitaka recounts the Buddha's discourses and dialogues with his disciples. The Vinaya Pitaka records the rules of monastic conduct, from the way monks eat, dress, sleep, and walk. The Abhidharma Pitaka is a deeper analysis of psychology, cosmology, and ontology in light of the Dharma. If we view the Tripitaka as a body, the Suttas are the heart, the Vinaya is the spine, and the Abhidharma is the sharp intellect that helps identify every movement of consciousness. Theravada emphasizes the individual. Each person must practice and realize the truth for themselves. The Buddha is merely a guide. There is no external power, no supernatural abilities, only mindfulness, clear awareness, and perseverance. Theravada practitioners often live in deep forests, in small monasteries with extremely simple lives. They practice the four foundations of mindfulness: contemplation of body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. Every step, every breath is a doorway to awakening. They do not seek miracles, they do not pray. The Northern School, or Mahayana, is another branch. While not denying the above, it expands upon it. Liberation is not just a matter for oneself, but a responsibility towards all beings. If one practices only for oneself, it is still a form of ego clinging. Mahayana teaches that a bodhisattva is one who vows to attain enlightenment to liberate all sentient beings, and they are willing to forego nirvana if it helps alleviate the suffering of others. I used to be confused between these two paths. One side was a retreat into the inner self for ultimate purification. The other was stepping into the world, embracing the suffering of others as one's own. I used to think I had to choose one or the other until I realized these are not two separate paths but two breaths of the same awakened heart. When we truly contemplate ourselves, compassion blossoms. And when we truly love others, the ego naturally dissolves. Mahayana scriptures are richer, with more symbols and skillful means. Some sutras use metaphorical language, such as the Lotus Sutra and the Avatamsaka Sutra. Some use images of a pure land to inspire practice, such as the Amitabha Sutra and the Sakhavadavyuha Sutra. Some sutras quote from the Tripitaka. Some are considered new scriptures, divinely written by great bodhisattvas. Mahayana is not rigid in form. Its purpose is to guide the ordinary mind towards virtue, whether through meditation, chanting the Buddha's name, or making offerings and giving charity. But the very richness of Mahayana scriptures can lead many into a maze. People begin learning the Dharma as if collecting this sutra, that commentary, a passage here and there. They try one Dharma method before fully completing it, then rush to try another. Some discuss prajna, wisdom, before clearly understanding the Four Noble Truths. Some chant a few verses and think they have entered samadhi. This confusion is not the fault of the scriptures, but of a mind that still desires to learn to know, rather than to live to see. Therefore, students of the Dharma need to be mindful. Do not let scriptures become a garment that is too loose. Do not use novelty as a measure of profundity. If a single verse helps you live more virtuously than yesterday, that is Dharma. If a simple phrase helps you reduce anger and envy, that is Mahayana. Scriptures are not on paper. They are in how you breathe, how you speak, how you are silent. I once heard an old Zen master say, "A person who sits still for an hour with a mind full of wandering thoughts is not equal to an old woman carrying water who maintains mindfulness." That statement shook me, because it reminded me that learning the Dharma is not about posture, nor about the number of sutras chanted or prostrations made. Learning the Dharma is living in such a way that every action, every thought, carries the light of awakening. And that is also the meeting point between Mahayana and Theravada. Both, despite their different forms, aim at internal transformation. Theravada proceeds by the path of subtle observation, like sunlight penetrating layers of mental dust. Mahayana proceeds by great compassion and skillful means, like rain nourishing all beings. But ultimately, the destination remains the same: liberation from suffering, from the cycle of birth and death. Whether you choose to read the Pali Canon or the Lotus Sutra, whether you chant the Great Compassion Mantra or the name of Amitabha Buddha, the most important question remains: does that teaching make you a kinder, more understanding, less selfish person? Because if not, then it is not the Dharma. If studying scriptures makes you judgmental of others, clinging to doctrines, debating who is right or wrong, then you are merely building a new ego, wrapped in a religious cloak. The ego that studies the Dharma can sometimes be more dangerous than the ordinary ego because it is protected by spiritual pride. And that is what the Buddha always warned against. The Buddha never told anyone to follow a specific school. He only taught to live according to the Noble Eightfold Path. Let go of the defilements in the mind. Live mindfully in every moment. If scriptures help you do that, then they are precious scriptures. If not, even if they are in the Tripitaka, they are merely ink on paper. Once a disciple asked the Buddha, "Sir, how many scriptures are enough for liberation?" The Buddha remained silent. After a while, he asked in return, "If someone is struck by a poisoned arrow, what does that person need? To learn about the type of wood the bow is made of, the material of the string, or to remove the arrow first?" The disciple was silent. The Buddha smiled. The Dharma is for practice, not for study. Scriptures, whether Theravada or Mahayana, are merely means. Truth is not in words. Truth shines only in your own real life. Perhaps you haven't read all the scriptures, that's fine. If you know how to yield in anger, how to bow your head when wrong, how to remain silent when you need to listen, then you have lived the Dharma. And as the Buddha once said, "Whoever sees the Dharma sees me." And I believe no scripture resounds as powerfully as a sincere heart. If there is one thing that has kept me connected to Buddhism all these years, it's not the temples, not the serene image of the Buddha, but the way Buddhism looks at life. Not romanticizing it, not wallowing in misery, but looking directly. And that gaze is not like a sharp knife cutting through all illusions, but like a silent, light illuminating layer after layer of ignorance. The Dharma doesn't want you to escape the world. The Dharma teaches you to understand the world to its roots, and from there, to let go. And to understand that, we must delve into the deepest parts of Buddhist teachings, where seemingly paradoxical concepts crystallize into a quiet yet dazzling philosophical system, like a diamond. First is Samsara, reincarnation. People often think of reincarnation as past lives, this life, and future lives. That may be true if viewed through a linear timeline, but Buddhism doesn't use time to define life. Samsara is the moment you get angry, then regret it, then get angry again, then regret it again. It's when you love, then hate, then love, then hate. It's wanting in the morning, erupting in anger at noon, then chanting repentance in the evening. This cycle itself is samsara. The Buddha doesn't compel you to believe in a next life. He merely invites you to look at this life, where you die 1,000 times a day, dying in a hateful thought, dying in a craving, dying in the moment you speak a hurtful word. And you are reborn each time you know how to stop, how to breathe, how to forgive. But samsara is not without cause. It operates according to an iron law, karma causality. This is not a simple story of what you sow, you shall reap. The Buddha didn't teach us to believe that if you do good today, you'll win the lottery tomorrow. He taught that every action, no matter how small, leaves a trace in the mind, just as dropping a stone into water creates ripples that you don't see but still spread. You say a malicious word, the other person hurts, but your own mind is also damaged. You help someone, they are happy, but you yourself feel lighthearted. No action is neutral, nothing is just a joke. Everything plants a seed, and every seed will eventually bear fruit. Buddhism calls this karma. But don't misunderstand, karma is not punishment. Karma is habit, it is the direction of the mind. If you habitually think negatively, judge, and doubt, then no matter how circumstances change, you will still see everything as dark. Conversely, if your mind is expansive and benevolent, you will still see a ray of light even in adversity. Karma is not far away. Karma is the perspective you carry in every moment. Why do I practice so much, yet my karma remains heavy? I asked him. What does practice mean to you? He said, chanting sutras, prostrating to the Buddha, being vegetarian. I remained silent, because in Buddhism, practice is not about outward actions. Practice is observing your own mind, knowing when anger arises and not fueling it, knowing when you want to lie and choosing silence. It's knowing when you crave recognition and smiling when no one remembers your name. That is true practice. And to be able to practice in this way, you must grasp a truth that every philosopher has touched upon, but none has expressed as thoroughly as Buddhism. Anatta, non-self. Anatta is the truth that throws our ego into panic, because it states that what we call I is merely a temporary aggregation of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Nothing within that is me, mine, or belongs to me. All is changing every second. The body is aging, emotions rise and fall, thoughts change shape like clouds in the sky. Willpower is also just a chain reaction from the past. If you peel back each layer, you will not find a fixed self anywhere. It's not because you are nothing, but because you are everything in a state of non-clinging. This sounds difficult, but think about it. When you are sad, can you point directly to where the sadness is? When you love someone, can you hold that feeling of love forever in the palm of your hand? Everything comes and goes, but we keep thinking it is us. And from that, we suffer because the self always demands to be protected, to be recognized, to be loved forever, to be unharmed. And when life doesn't comply, it hurts, and life never complies. Anatta doesn't tell you to eliminate yourself. Anatta merely invites you to release the illusion of a fixed self so you can live more freely, less stubbornly, more lightly in the face of all change. Anatta is the heart of another principle, dependent origination. Nothing exists on its own. The flower you see contains sunlight, rainwater, soil, fertilizer, the gardener's care, the air. Even the farmer's pain and the buyer's gaze nothing is separate. You are the same. Every one of your emotions, every thought, every decision comes from countless interconnected causes and conditions. From a mother's words when you were 4, from a song heard when you were sad, from a friend who once betrayed you, from a dream you never dared to voice. You are not alone, nor are you independent. You are the result of everything. The Buddha said, when this is, that is. When this arises, that arises. When this is not, that is not. This is the core of dependent origination and also the foundation of compassion. For when you see that everything is interconnected, you can no longer hate anyone forever because you understand. They too are victims of karma, of living conditions, of mistaken views. And so are you. And because you understand, you forgive, you let go. Dependent origination leads to emptiness, shunyata, the pinnacle of Mahayana Buddhist thought. Emptiness is not nothingness, but rather that nothing inherently exists independently. That chair is wood, a carpenter, an idea, hands, time. Nothing in it is purely chair. Your suffering is the same. It is not inherent, but the result of many factors. And if you change those factors, the suffering will dissolve. That is the greatest hope of the Dharma. Suffering is not destiny. It is merely an aggregation. And if it is an aggregation, it can disperse. If everything is empty, what's the point of living? I smiled, because it is precisely by seeing emptiness that we begin to truly live, no longer clinging, no longer contending, no longer erecting barriers between ourselves and others. Emptiness doesn't make you lose your way, it makes you fly lighter. Not because you are indifferent, but because you see that all beings are equally worthy of compassion. And this seeing leads to an ideal, the Bodhisattva path. A bodhisattva is one who lives amidst this world without forgetting the suffering of others. Not to be a hero, not to liberate sentient beings as a noble duty, but because when the mind has clearly seen non-self, love becomes a natural instinct. You cannot help but help, you cannot help but bend down, and you don't need anyone to know it. Mahayana Buddhism encourages you to practice, but not to retreat into the deep mountains, rather, to maintain a pure heart even when stepping into the marketplace. Not to be untouched by the dust of the world, but to know that dust is also part of the path. Mahayana does not oppose Theravada. Theravada is the foundation, the basics, the cultivation of the inner self to be as firm as stone. Mahayana is the open door, bringing that inner self out to serve others, no longer distinguishing between saint and ordinary person. The Buddha never divided the Dharma into two. He only looked into the heart of each person. If that heart is virtuous, awakened, knows how to illuminate itself, knows how to love others, then that is the right path. Whether you recite mantras, meditate, prostrate, or simply breathe quietly, if you live profoundly with that, you are on the Buddha's path. There is a concept that every practitioner yearns for, every scholar discusses, and most people misunderstand: Nirvana. Hearing that word, people imagine a place of absolute peace, where there is no suffering, no birth and death, no attachment to tranquil paradise for pure souls. But if you were to ask the Buddha what nirvana is, he would not give you a map, nor would he promise anything magnificent. He would simply smile and say, "Nirvana is the complete cessation of greed, hatred, and delusion." That's all. No glamour, no mysticism, no incense-filled haze. Nirvana is the complete extinguishing of the fires that burn us daily, bottomless craving, baseless anger, and the illusion of an immortal self. Some might say, that's so boring, no craving, no love, no anger, what's the point of living? But they don't understand. Cessation is not about cutting off emotions, but about escaping their mastery. You still love, but you don't suffer because of love. You are still sad, but you don't collapse from sadness. You still live, but you are not controlled by life. Nirvana is when you clearly see that everything comes and goes, and you no longer resist that passing. Nirvana is not a state of no feeling, but the stillness amidst all movement, the clarity amidst all noise. It is a freedom that needs no conditions, that no one can give and no one can take away. It is not something you gain only after death. You can touch it while living. And to touch it, you need liberation. Liberation does not come from becoming a monk or nun, nor from chanting sutras for hours, nor from fasting, observing silence, or holding your breath. Liberation comes when you see things exactly as they are, adding nothing, subtracting nothing. When you stop calling joy happiness, when you stop calling pain unhappiness. When you stop labeling everything and begin to simply see that someone's praise is a phenomenon in their mind. To see that someone's criticism is the same. To see that you are sad, but that sadness is not you. To see that you are angry, but that anger is not your permanent nature. When that seeing is deep enough, the ego begins to dissolve, and in the void where the ego just fell away, you feel weightless. That is liberation. But to achieve that liberation, it is not by faith, not by rituals, but by wisdom. And no wisdom is higher than prajna wisdom. Prajna is not knowledge, not understanding from books, but a profound penetration into the true nature of all phenomena. When you look at an event and see all its causes, conditions, and effects, unclouded by emotions, undistorted by ego, that is prajna. Prajna is the gaze that pierces through the mask of life, where we see that all phenomena are empty, all names and forms are merely temporary shadows. And precisely because we see their emptiness, we no longer cling to them. And without clinging, there is freedom. That is why great masters like Nagarjuna, Zhiyi, and Huineng all regarded prajna as the sharpest blade, cutting through all bonds, and also the lamp that illuminates the darkness of ignorance. But this wisdom is not for the impatient. No one becomes enlightened by reading a few sutras. No one achieves liberation by listening to a few dharma talks. Prajna is not born from words. It is born from living authentically with every moment, with wide-open eyes and an undefended heart. There was a time when I thought wisdom was something distant, reserved for saints who had withdrawn from the mundane world. But then I met an old village woman who couldn't read, who only busied herself in her small kitchen. Every time she cooked rice, she would scoop out a separate portion for the stray dog outside her gate. No one told her, no one saw, she just smiled gently. It's also a sentient being, it's also hungry like me. And I understood that was prajna, not because she could recite, all phenomena are empty, but because she lived, all phenomena are equal. Prajna is not in theory. It's in how you listen when others suffer. It's in how you pull back your hand when you're about to hurt someone. It's in your ability to accept the truth, even if that truth shatters your beautiful self-image. When you have prajna, you don't need to argue right or wrong. You don't need others to understand you. You no longer see yourself as the center, yet you don't diminish yourself either. You are simply like the sky, unattached to clouds, unattached to flying birds, unattached to their cries, yet encompassing all. And the strange thing is, the deeper one steps into prajna wisdom, the closer one gets to modern science. Many think Buddhism and science are two opposing extremes. One, an ancient religion full of mystique. The other, the light of modern reason. But if you look closely, you will see that Buddhism is a science of consciousness that has existed for over 25 centuries. Consider the principle of impermanence in Buddhism. Isn't it very close to the law of entropy in physics? The concept of Anatta, isn't it highly compatible with neuroscience's discovery that there is no single, fixed self-center in the brain? The doctrine of dependent origination, isn't it a multi-layered explanation of cause and effect that today's systems science uses? And meditation, hasn't it been confirmed by hundreds of research studies regarding its impact on brain wrinkles, concentration ability, sleep depth, and even EQ. The Buddha never opposed science. It's just that in his time, there were no instruments to measure it. But he saw it with a vision that needed no lenses, no data, saw it through silent self-observation, and he invited us to turn inwards, for that is the true laboratory. This deeply moves me because in an age where people are immersed in machines, data, and artificial intelligence, Buddhism reminds me that what you seek is not on a screen, it's in your breath. Nirvana is not a religious dream. It is a reality that can be lived every single moment. Liberation is not something mysterious. It is the act each time you choose honesty instead of pretense, choose love instead of selfishness, choose understanding instead of condemnation. And wisdom is not far away. It can sprout right when you are washing dishes, cleaning your room, listening to a loved one without interrupting. Buddhism doesn't force you to believe, it simply says, try it. Step into yourself like a scientist entering a laboratory, observe, record, be aware, and then you will see that no one needs to save you. This very seeing is salvation. Don't run away from life, don't deify the Dharma, but live in the world with a listening heart and a wisdom that knows how to let go. And when you let go, you will realize that no one ever bound you. When I first embarked on the path of Dharma study, I thought that practice was the domain of monks and nuns in temples, those who had renounced the world, ate vegetarian, chanted sutras, and meditated under old trees. As for me, a person amidst the dusty marketplace of life, I could only observe from afar. I was wrong. The Buddha never said that practice belonged only to certain people, nor did he ever confine it to specific forms. If you live in the city and maintain a pure mind, you are practicing. If you sit amidst a noisy family and are not swept away by craving or anger, you are living the Dharma. Practice is not about location, it is about every conscious breath. But to avoid misunderstanding, a student of the Dharma needs to clearly understand that practice has methods. It's not that chanting a lot, prostrating a lot, or fasting a lot necessarily leads to progress. Nor is simply going with the flow enough. The mind is a wild beast. Without reins and a steady hand, it will run wild into ignorance. Among the methods of practice, the most prominent are the three paths: precepts, joy, concentration, din, and wisdom, hu. Precepts are the foundation. Without precepts, there can be no concentration. Without concentration, wisdom is merely a dream. Keeping precepts is not forcing oneself into rigid moral frameworks, but choosing to live mindfully. For example, not killing is not just about not taking a life, but being aware that every life is precious. Not stealing is not just about not taking others' possessions, but not seizing their time, their trust, their peace. Not engaging in sexual misconduct is not using affection as a tool for manipulation. Not lying is learning to be silent when you don't yet understand enough. Not drinking alcohol is reminding yourself not to get intoxicated by the illusions you yourself create. Precepts are how we cleanse our inner self to prepare to enter a higher state, concentration. Concentration is not sitting motionless for hours, but the ability to gather the mind amidst a turbulent life. You maintain consistency in your mind. When working, you work. When eating, you eat. When in pain, you are in pain without clinging, without indulgence, without panic. In concentration, you begin to clearly see every subtle movement of the mind, like someone sitting by a riverbank, watching each ripple, not jumping in to swim, not being swept away, just observing. And it is that very observation that gives rise to wisdom. Wisdom is not derived from intellect, not from degrees, but from a deep, direct apprehension of the impermanent, non-self, dependently originated nature of all phenomena. Wisdom is not clever debate, but letting go after having seen clearly. If you keep precepts but lack concentration, you easily become a hypocrite. If you have concentration but lack wisdom, you easily become an unmoving, emotionless person. If you have wisdom but do not keep precepts, you easily fall into arrogance. Therefore, these three elements are like the three legs of a tripod. Lacking one, one's spiritual practice falters. Besides precepts, concentration, and wisdom, there are other means of practice, depending on each person's disposition. Some are suited to meditation, some to chanting the Buddha's name, some to reciting sutras. Others practice through actions, helping people, caring for parents, forgiving those who have hurt them. Each person has a different gait, but the destination is the same. I once met an 80-year-old woman, frail, with poor eyesight, illiterate. She didn't chant sutras or meditate. But every morning she would wake early to sweep the temple courtyard, quietly light incense sticks, clasp her hands before the Buddha statue, and smile. "Hello, teacher. How are you today?" Not a single word inviting enlightenment, not a single prayer for liberation, just a presence, a simple intimacy. I suddenly realized that perhaps she had been practicing without even knowing she was practicing. Because ultimately, practice is a matter of the heart. But for that heart not to lose its way, a student of the Dharma needs to understand one more thing: no Dharma method is higher than another. All means are dependent on one's disposition. Some prefer to quietly observe their breath. Others find peace of mind when chanting the Buddha's name. Some practice Vipassana insight meditation. Some visualize Amitabha Buddha. Some delve deeply into mantras. Buddhism has never imposed a single path. The important thing is not which method, but whether you live authentically with it. The Buddha never forced anyone to meditate, nor did he reject the forms of chanting or mantra recitation. Each method is like a raft. As long as it takes you across the river, don't stand on the bank arguing which raft is prettier. Choose one and step on it. And once you've stepped on, go all the way. Don't jump from one method to another because you deem it ineffective. No method is effective for a restless mind that always wants quick results. A student of the Dharma must know patience, like one who plants a seed, not digging it up, not checking every day to see if it has sprouted, but quietly nurturing it, trusting in conditions. Eventually, the seed will break open, and the sprout will emerge from the ground. Besides the main methods, the Buddha also taught many ways to practice in daily life that, if we are not subtle, we easily overlook. Like practicing through action, every time you wash dishes with a clear, ungrumbling mind, you are meditating. Like practicing through speech, every time you are silent at the right moment or say something that eases another's suffering, you are living the Dharma. Like practicing through thought, when you catch an envious thought arising and do not fuel it, you are observing. Practice is not just during chanting hours. Practice is 24 hours of mindfulness. Even seemingly trivial things, walking, standing, lying, sitting, can be practice if you perform them with mindfulness. I remember once someone asked a Zen master, "How long do you sit in meditation each day?" He replied, "I don't sit in meditation, I am meditation." That answer was the greatest revelation for me. You don't practice meditation, you are meditation. You don't chant sutras, your every breath is a sutra. You don't search for the Buddha, the way you live is a declaration of the Buddha nature within you. And at some point, you will realize that no one needs to certify that you are practicing, no one needs to applaud, no one needs to know. You just need to be honest enough with yourself, humble enough to learn anew every day, brave enough to clearly see the darkness in your mind without denying it, and gentle enough to keep going, even when you fall painfully. The method of practice, ultimately, is not about quantity but about the quality of presence. Are you truly present in everything you do? Do you face your mind as it is, or are you pretending? Do you dare to live an honest life instead of trying to appear virtuous? If so, then you are already practicing, and you don't need anyone to tell you that. There was a question that haunted me throughout my early years of Dharma study. If there is no omnipotent creator, then who decides what is good and what is evil? And if everything arises from dependent origination, with no absolute agent, is it fair that those who sow evil reap suffering, while those who do good find peace? I carried these questions through many temples, many scriptures, many sleepless nights. And then Buddhism gave me an answer, not simple, not easy to accept, but so profound that I could not turn away. In Buddhism, good and evil are not two opposing forces orchestrated by deities. There is no divine judge recording merits and demerits. No one outside judges you. All good and evil operate according to a natural, objective, non-emotional principle, the law of karma and its retribution. Those who commit evil are not punished. Rather, they are sowing into their own minds a destructive tendency, a poisonous psychological structure, like someone drinking poison. No one punishes them, but death still comes as a reality. Those who do good are not rewarded. They are simply sowing within themselves a clarity, a nourishing energy, an understanding perspective. Like planting a healthy tree, sweet fruit is the natural outcome. Good and evil do not come from intention alone, but from psychological results and actual karmic consequences. Sometimes you do a good deed, but it stems from the ego wanting praise, wanting recognition. Then it can still give rise to ego clinging, to craving. And in that sense, it may not be truly wholesome in the ultimate teaching. Sometimes you are considered evil by others, but in reality, you are daring to speak a necessary truth, even if it makes others uncomfortable. That might sometimes be a deep root of goodness. Buddhism teaches us not to view good and evil with lazy eyes, not to simply say, helping others is good, killing is evil, without considering the context, motivation, and long-term consequences. Good and evil in Buddhism are not rigid. They are subtle, profound, and require the wisdom of observation to see the whole picture. And because of this, in Buddhism, no one is absolutely evil, nor is anyone eternally good. Every human being is a ceaseless flow of actions, thoughts, choices, and reactions. Today you do a good deed. Tomorrow you might get angry and speak a harmful word. The important thing is not whether you belong to the good group or the evil group, but whether you are conscious of what you are doing. Consciousness is the boundary between a student of the Dharma and an ignorant person. But if good and evil are not absolute, not judged by an omnipotent being, then what serves as the standard? The Buddha did not provide a list of 10 good deeds and 10 evil deeds as fixed laws. He simply invited us to look at our own minds before, during, and after each action. If that action makes you clear, gentle, and peaceful, then it is good. If it makes you anxious, heavy, and distressed, then it is evil. No one else judges you. You are the one who feels it most clearly. And more importantly, Buddhism does not stop at good and evil, because even good, if still clung to, is a fetter. Imagine you are a good person, doing good deeds, and you start to feel proud of it. You begin to compare, you feel superior to others. You demand recognition, you suffer when people are ungrateful. Then that good deed has begun to transform. It becomes an ego wearing a cloak of morality, and Buddhism calls that good clinging, attachment to the image of being a good person. Nagarjuna once wrote, "Even the Dharma must be abandoned, not to mention non-Dharma," meaning that even goodness, even the Dharma, even the scriptures, if you cling to them, viewing them as yourself, then you also need to let go. Because the ultimate goal is not to become a good person, but to become a free person. Free from distinctions, free from labels, free from spiritual roles. And that is not easy. Because we grow up in a world that rewards what is called good and punishes what is called bad. We are taught that if we are well-behaved, we will be loved. If we are naughty, we will be punished. We carry that model even when we enter the spiritual path. We think doing good will earn the Buddha's blessing, and doing evil will result in karmic retribution. We don't do good out of understanding, we do it out of fear. But Buddhism wants us to go beyond fear, to live virtuously, because it is the natural essence of a clear mind, like flowers exuding fragrance, like streams flowing, like the morning sun, not for benefit, not for reward, needing no praise. When you live that way, goodness is no longer morality, it becomes a way of being. I once met a homeless man, without a home, without family, without a penny. But every morning he would collect empty bottles, go to each shop to ask for leftover bread, then take it to the park for the stray dogs. One rainy day I saw him trembling with cold, yet he used his own raincoat to cover a litter of newborn puppies. I asked, "Why do you do that?" He smiled. "They also need to live." No logic, no philosophy, just one sentence. But in it, I saw an ocean of kindness, and Buddhism calls that unconditional goodness. You don't need to know much doctrine to live kindly, but if you learn the doctrine to live more kindly, more sustainably, that is precious. And if you are diligent enough, you will see that good and evil are not two opposing paths, but two steps on the same journey. Through evil, you learn compassion. Through good, you learn to let go. Through both, you learn freedom. And perhaps that is the ultimate destination of the Dharma. A practitioner embarking on the path is like a boy searching for an ox. This is not a random image. In Eastern culture, the ox is a symbol of the mind, not the mind in the sense of heart or emotions, but the fundamental driving force within each person, both disciplined and wild, both intimate and elusive. The 10 ox herding pictures illustrate the spiritual journey through the steps of a boy and his ox. 10 stages, 10 paintings. Each picture is a profound layer in the journey from delusion to awakening, from awakening to liberation, from liberation to returning to ordinary life in freedom. First picture, seeking the ox. You begin with confusion. You sense something is amiss in this life. Despite having money, fame, and love, something feels missing. You look around and suddenly ask, "Who am I after all? Why do I suffer?" That question is the first step, when the boy leaves the village to seek the ox. You don't see anything clearly yet. You just know you can't continue living as before. Second picture, finding the traces asterisk. You begin to read books, listen to Dharma talks, engage with the teachings. You see the first signs. You haven't seen the ox yet, but you see its footprints imprinted on the ground. It's like when you hear a sentence in a sutra and feel it resonate within you, or when you hear a teacher speak of impermanence and suddenly realize that death is real. Those footprints compel you to continue. Third picture, seeing the ox. You have your first spiritual experience. You begin to see your mind clearly. Ah, this is craving, this is anger, this is wandering thought. You begin to recognize the ox, but it is still far away. You cannot touch it, you only glimpse it in the dense forest. You know your mind is full of disturbance, but you haven't tamed it yet. Fourth picture, catching the ox. You resolve to practice. You meditate, keep precepts, practice mindfulness. You begin to grasp the reins. The ox struggles, your mind resists. Anger arises, desires surge, wandering thoughts constantly flood in. You are tired, you are confused, but you do not give up. You hold the reins, holding onto each breath, each step. You begin to gain mastery. Fifth picture, herding the ox. The ox is not yet fully obedient, but you are no longer dragged along by it. You know when it intends to escape, you know when it pretends to be tame. You are patient, neither hitting nor indulging. You herd your mind with mindfulness. You begin to experience truly peaceful days. The mind no longer runs wild, the heart is less agitated. You see a glimmer of the light of freedom. Sixth picture, riding the ox home. You and your mind begin to harmonize, no longer struggling. You ride on the ox's back, playing a flute, a beautiful and moving image. This is when you practice no longer out of fear of suffering or hope for good fortune. You practice because you care for yourself, for others, because that is how you want to live, lightly, freely, without compulsion. Seventh picture, ox forgotten, self alone. This is a turning point. After practicing for a while, you realize that there is no longer a need to distinguish between you and your mind. The rider and the ox have become one. No more struggle, no more separation, no one hurting anyone. The ox vanishes because there is nothing left to tame. You also vanish because there is no ego needing to prove itself. Only pure presence remains. But strangely, it is precisely when all concepts dissolve that you see more clearly than ever. This seeing is no longer through words, no longer through intellect. You just know, like someone closing their eyes, no longer seeing images, but knowing they are in a vast, boundless space. Eighth picture, both ox and self forgotten. This is the deepest point. The practitioner also dissolves. There is no longer anyone practicing, no one awakening, no one realizing. You live as if you never intended to seek the Dharma. All forms fall away, all names lose their meaning. You no longer see yourself as a practitioner. You are simply like a floating cloud, like a clear moon, like a passing breeze. Some call this absolute non-self, but truly even naming it is wrong, for in this place there is nothing left to name. Ninth picture, returning to the source asterisk. After everything has fallen away, you return to life. You walk on the old paths, pass by the old people. Your gaze is no longer as it was before. You see life operating in every leaf, every drop of dew, every silent gaze. You no longer need to prove you understand the Dharma, no need for anyone to call you a Zen master or an awakened one. You return as if you never left. And when you return like this, you step into the 10th picture. 10th picture, entering the marketplace with open hands. You eat rice, wash dishes, garden, talk, and laugh with your neighbors. Everyone thinks you are just an ordinary old man, a kind father, a gentle carpenter. No one knows that you have been through everything, through delusion, through confusion, through internal struggle, through the death of the ego, and returned with an empty heart. But it is precisely in that ordinary existence that there is profound, extraordinary depth. You live amidst the marketplace without being stained by its dust. You help others without needing anyone to know. You smile, not because something is joyful, but because life itself is complete, with nothing left to add or subtract. And that is the complete journey of the 10 ox herding pictures. From seeker to one at ease, from delusion to awakening, from ego clinging to non-self, from practice to no one practicing. The Buddha once said, "I teach you nothing. I only show you what has always been present within you." And the 10 ox herding pictures are not an external story, but a mirror reflecting the very spiritual process within your heart. Whether you are at the first picture or the 10th, It is neither more nor less significant. For every step is precious. Every turning point has value. The important thing is whether you are walking. A book can be something you rest your head on at night, or it can be the first breeze of the season that awakens a part of your mind that has been asleep since a past life. And on the journey of Dharma study, there are books that bring not just knowledge, but also the sound of a bell striking an invisible door in your heart. I call these books old friends of the soul. When I first got lost in the jungle of scriptures, not knowing what was root and what was branch, I encountered the Pali Canon, simple, unadorned language, yet hidden in every phrase was the breath of the original Buddha. No supernatural powers, no tin-tiered heavens, just simple teachings. Be aware, see things as they are. Reading Pali was like entering a forest where no one had yet blazed a trail. Every word was a root, every passage a stone. You had to carve your own path. But precisely because of this, each realization was met with tears. Later, I encountered the Prajnaparamita Sutra and was knocked out of every familiar concept. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. These were no longer lifeless chants, but a call from the deepest place of non-self. I remember the first time I read the sutra, I laughed aloud because I realized that all along I had been living in the prison of language itself, of concepts like gain and loss, self and other, right and wrong. The sutra didn't answer any of my questions. It simply overturned all questions and left me to sit peacefully with not knowing. Then came the Lotus Sutra, where every sentence is a cloud, every metaphor a door. There, I saw the Buddha no longer as a still image, but as the greatest storyteller in the universe. He told of children lost in a burning house, of a jewel hidden in a garment, of a poor father who transformed into a king to save his son. Reading the Lotus Sutra, I no longer sought philosophy. I sought renewed faith that all sentient beings have the capacity to become Buddha, including me, including you, including the person you bitterly hated yesterday. And then the commentaries of Nagarjuna, Asanga, and Vasubandhu came to me like old teachers. They did not comfort me, they challenged me. They forced me to ponder every concept. What is emptiness? What is consciousness only? Is the mind an image or the one who gazes? At times, I spent 3 days on 3 lines, but each time I understood, it was a change in heartbeat, a change in perspective, a piece of the ego peeled away without a knife. I also sought out contemporary works. Thich Nhat Hanh's The Miracle of Mindfulness was like a sutra written in whispers. I read it and saw light in every drop of tea, saw life in every step. The Zen master didn't teach me to seek liberation far away. He showed me that when you wash dishes and know you are washing dishes, you are already different from the entire world. I still remember that afternoon years ago, in an old bookstore by the Perfume River, I found a translation of Golden Sayings by my teacher. The small book's paper was yellowed, but every line was a golden thread sewing together my torn heart during a time of crisis. In it, the Zen master told stories as if speaking to a dear friend, comforting a child who had lost its way. He wrote, "Just one conscious breath is enough to bring you back." I sat there in the dim room and inhaled and exhaled. For the first time, like someone who had just learned to live again. Later, I came across Buddhist Dictionary by Anatta, a German monk. His writing was concise, his reasoning unadorned. Reading his book was like sitting opposite a serious yet warm scholar who didn't narrate his own life but shone a direct light into the nature of suffering, of the path, of non-self. From him, I learned the decisiveness that if you are not serious enough with your mind, do not expect awakening. And then I followed the traces of D.T. Suzuki and Alan Watts outsiders who entered Buddhism not by faith but by radical questioning. They brought Western light to illuminate the arteries of Eastern thought. They did what many Asians dared not, question scriptures, traditions, and even sacred beliefs. And in doing so, they revived what seemed to have turned into stiff bronze statues. Someone asked me, "How many Buddhist books have you read?" I don't know how to answer, because counting volumes is meaningless. One can only count the times one has truly changed. There are books I've read 3 times, and each time is like the first. There are books I took 10 years to understand one sentence. There are excerpts of just a few lines that I carry with me like a personal sutra throughout my journey. Books in Buddhism are not for knowing, but for letting go. Not for accumulating knowledge, but for pulling out old thorns of perception from the skin of the soul. And ultimately, you will realize that the most important, deepest book is the one you cannot hold in your hand, cannot turn with your fingers, cannot print with ink. That is your own book, where every sorrow and joy, every failure, every moment of clarity, and even every foolish moment are writing lines of scripture that can never be repeated. Buddhism does not force you to memorize. It only invites you to read yourself carefully. Thank you for your patience and for dedicating your full attention to listening to the entirety of the Essence of Buddhist Philosophy. In an era where speed is replacing depth, taking the time to truly ponder a work like this is not easy. It's not just an act of consuming knowledge, but a form of silent, repetitive practice, training oneself in the capacity to dwell longer with an idea, to embrace complexity, and to carefully navigate through each layer of meaning. We have just finished a work that seemed light, but opened up a system of perception full of questioning and unease. For it does not try to soothe us with promises, nor does it lull us with certainties. On the contrary, it forces us to confront ourselves, our anxious ego, our misunderstandings about good and evil, and the yearning for liberation ignited in a world where everything is constantly changing. If you feel you have just listened to a book, try writing down what in it troubled you the most. If you feel you haven't understood, all the more reason to write down what you haven't understood. Because sometimes, naming what we don't understand is the most honest approach to beginning to understand. I am not inviting you to evaluate the book in the usual sense, but to answer for yourself. What from this book has touched your lived experience? And if you feel something is still not enough, not complete, not resolved, then suggest another book, a work you'd like me to slowly unpack with you, layer by layer. It could be a philosophical, religious, political, or scientific work, as long as it has the capacity to make you think more than agree, and makes you see reading or listening as an ethical act in the modern world. For now, goodbye, and I look forward to meeting you again in another book.